Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Lavonne and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to talk all about poop. Your baby's poop, actually. The very first poop of your baby is called meconium, and it's actually super dark, like almost black colored, maybe super dark brown. It's really sticky and kind of tarry. It's also technically sterile or clean. So sometimes the baby can poop inside the amniotic fluid, which can turn the amniotic fluid different colors like green or black, usually not black, hopefully not black, yellowish. And so I'm here today to talk all about what that means, how risky it is or not risky it is, and then what to expect. So make sure you subscribe down below, turn on your notifications, and then let's talk all about your baby's poop. So I know that we just got through talking all about hemorrhoids, which has to do with your poop. So I thought it would be fun to come back and talk all about your baby's poop today, because this can be a huge concern for you guys. The number of messages I get about this one, and especially with my clients, how concerned people get about meconium is huge. And so I want to help calm your nerves all about meconium, tell you what it is, and talk through it, okay? So what is meconium? Meconium is just technically the term for your baby's first poop. And that first poop, technically they haven't used their digestive system, right? That poop has been marinating in their digestive system their entire gestation or the whole time you were pregnant. And so it takes some time once the baby usually starts eating, that stimulates the digestive tract to poop out. But sometimes, and especially the closer you get to your due date, their digestive system is mature, so it's kind of ready to go. And so sometimes your baby can poop inside. Typically, it means one of two things. One, that your baby was kind of stressed out in labor, and that is normal, okay? When we hear about your baby being stressed out, it's like, for us, there's a certain level of stress that's like normal / good for us. It's good for us to be exposed to hard things. It makes us more resilient. It makes us develop coping skills. Same thing goes for your baby, okay? So your baby occasionally throughout labor can sometimes be stressed out. Your doctor, your nurse might use that terminology. As long as they're not too stressed out, kind of it is what it is. So you might, let's say your water breaks and it's clear, and then towards the end of your labor, it looks a little more meconium stained or meconium color, brown, yellow, greenish colored. That means your baby pooped inside. For your labor and birth, that means nothing, okay? It literally is like oh, cool, like great, noted, when it really matters is at birth, okay? So the first reason that your baby may poop inside is because they're kind of stressed out. The next reason, which is super common, is because you're past your due date or your baby is technically mature. And you can imagine that as you get closer to your due date, their digestive system's cool and they're like, oh, I like kind of want to poop a little. And so they poop a little in your fluid. It is what it is. Again, this is something we want to note, but it is super duper common. Now, mind you, it does hold a little bit of risk. And so maybe you've heard a story of someone who had Meconium Aspiration syndrome, or they aspirated the meconium. I'm going to talk all about that risk, but I want to be super duper duper clear that meconium, your baby pooping, first of all means that the system works. The whole works from beginning to end. They have a patent anus, as we call it, and we're good to go, okay? It is the reason why that when your water breaks, and you can go back to my breaking your water video, which I'll link above and below, that when your water breaks, you want to know what color it is. Typically, the amniotic fluid should be clear, but when the baby poops inside, sometimes that fluid can turn other colors, and it can kind of be this spectrum. I already mentioned this, but it can be kind of yellow tinged, and that's why sometimes your nurse will turn on the light and be like, oh, let me look at that again. So it's like super subtle. Or it can be literally kind of split pea soup style, kind of nasty fluid that's thicker and looks more poopy on that spectrum, and anything in between. So if your fluid, when your water breaks, is more yellow colored, green colored, brown colored, has little chunks in it, that's something to note and something to call your provider about, / you're gonna probably head into the hospital, okay? Because we wanna make sure that your baby isn't stressed out in that scenario, all right? So we have this spectrum. Now, the risk is, and the reason why we care, is for delivery. When you're in labor, it's somewhat separate from the actual labor, your labor goes however it goes, and we're okay, noted, they have meconium. And the reason why it matters at birth is because when your baby's inside, they're floating around in fluid. We want that fluid to be clear because it's easier on the lungs, because when they're inside, their lungs are actually full of fluid. And we see that they're practicing breathing, but they're actually getting the oxygen from the umbilical cord at that point. They're just practicing the movement of their lungs. And so when they go through the vagina or they go through the C-section incision, there's a little bit of smush on their lungs. And this is why we really like vaginal births. And I actually talked about this in my risk of vaginal birth versus cesarean video, because the baby doesn't get the same amount of smush through the in a cesarean birth versus a vaginal birth. And so when the baby goes through, that kind of smushes out a lot of that fluid, but then they pop out into the world and all of a sudden, bam, their lungs have pushed out some of that fluid, and then they breathe in air for the first time. And so the goal is you want most of that fluid out. Some of that's gonna be left over. It's not gonna totally clear out the lungs, but then over time we get them to cry. And as that happens, it helps to pop open the bottom part of the lungs. They absorb some of that fluid. We maybe suction out a little bit as needed. They go skin to skin. We leave them that way too. And then some of that fluid can drain out, wipe it away, and they're good to go. But when the fluid has poop in it, you can imagine they're swimming around in poopy fluid in their lungs. You imagine breathing in like not even poop, but something other than water. It makes it so much more difficult for your body to absorb, and it really can affect the breathing. And so when the baby comes out with meconium, we are worried about them and their breathing, which breathing is life, right? And we love us to breathe. If you stop breathing, we need to take care of that, all right? So they're gonna watch your baby. Now, most of the time, even if there's meconium in the fluid, the baby comes out and they're like, "Rah!" Right? And we used to actually not try to get them to cry, but the current standard as of 2020 is to get your baby to cry and then to have them just kind of work it out, and it's like a wait and see type situation. Even if you have the split pea soup kind of colored amniotic fluid, sometimes a baby comes out and they're just like, "Rah!" and they kind of are gunky. They may need to suction out a little bit, but they're sometimes really good to go. If you have mostly clear, but just like a tiny bit of poop in it versus really thick, you can imagine if I were to breathe in soup versus water, I'm gonna have an easier time absorbing that and breathing through it. So the thicker the meconium, the more concerned we get as a care team, right? If I'm looking at your amniotic fluid that's come out and I'm like, ooh, it is thick and like really brown and really looks kind of split pea soupy. And so we're gonna be more aware at that birth, and we may have a pediatric team there, we might have the NICU team there. We're gonna be prepared that your baby might struggle with breathing initially, okay? Now, if that were to happen and the baby were to breathe in the poop and it caused issues with their breathing where they're requiring assistance and maybe they're needing extra care, that is called a meconium aspiration syndrome. And meconium aspiration syndrome typically would require a NICU stay. So NICU stands for the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. So typically, as long as everything's good in the delivery room, the baby's gonna go to you, you're gonna go skin to skin, you're gonna lovey-dove, but if the nurse is watching your baby and going, ooh, I'm seeing some signs that your baby's really struggling to breathe or really working hard to breathe, especially in the circumstance of meconium, they may take the baby either from your chest or directly from your vagina or directly from your C-section birth into a little baby warmer area where the NICU team, pediatric team, and or nursing team can take care of them. And we wanna get that fluid out. We don't wanna leave it there because they're trying to breathe, and every time they go, they're breathing in more of that poopy fluid. And we want them to breathe in air, not poop. So when they go there, that's where they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna suction out the lungs. They're gonna try to either get the baby to cry. They may need to do some other measures to help to make sure that your baby gets enough oxygen. And in the case that people say, okay, and actually I should disclaim this. People say they swallowed the meconium or they swallowed the poop. It's not actually swallowed. Like if they swallow it, whatever. It's that it gets into their lungs. There is a difference between the two, okay? So if the meconium goes into their lungs, of the babies that have to go to the NICU, and it's like, if it's a true meconium aspiration syndrome, they need to go to the neonatal intensive care because they're gonna need some oxygen support. So of the babies that aspirated some of that meconium, about 80+% are discharged home from a non-intensive care setting. What does that mean? That like they're not even in the NICU, right? So they may have some extra observation, they may be watching them, but around like some of those, around 8-ish%, will need a NICU stay. And then of that, like a very small percentage actually die from it, okay? So especially like I'm getting into all like the death stuff. I hate using that word on here. But again, like you're grown, so we'll talk like you are. And so just understand basically what that means is that most of the time it doesn't mean anything, okay? I have heard mamas tell me like, oh, I had meconium and I thought the whole time the fact that I had a vaginal birth was a miracle because I had meconium and that meant a C-section. Meconium does not mean a C-section. If your baby is stressed out, then that might cause a C-section, but that alone, just a straight up meconium, we actually want the baby to go through the vagina because it's gonna help with that breathing issues and help push out some of the amniotic fluid that has poop in it, okay? So moral of the story is it doesn't matter. Please don't stress out about this, but we want to note the color of your fluid. Make sure you tell your provider when you get to the hospital if you notice that the fluid was a little more yellow or brown colored. They're going to watch it. And then at birth, if you see some extra people show up to your delivery, that's just because your care team is being extra precautious to make sure that you have the necessary care team there to take care of your baby. The other hard part is sometimes if there is a really thick meconium, sometimes the baby can't go directly skin to skin. And that's because we have to prioritize their airway or their breathing, because without that, we don't do so well. It's not so hot, okay? So we wanna make sure your baby's breathing. So sometimes they'll need to bring the baby to the baby warmer, suction out the lungs, stimulate them, make sure that their oxygen level's good, and then a lot of times they're gonna come right back to you. If your baby comes out and cries, most of the time babies still go skin to skin. We're not stressing about this stuff, guys. It's really not that big of a deal. It's more of a wait and see type situation. Thank you guys for being with me here today. If you have more questions, comments, concerns, throw them in the comment box down below. I do look at every comment that comes in, so also keep that in mind. And then if you have questions, how to get a hold of me, how to take my childbirth classes, coping with labor, VBAC, infant safety CPR, any online services, virtual support, all the things, everything's in the description box down below. You can go to bundlebirth.com. It's also all over there. And then make sure that you subscribe, share this with a friend, share it on your mommy groups to spread the love and spread the information that hopefully feels really empowering to you, makes you feel more comfortable with your labor and birth, and helps you to know what to expect. And then don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you soon. Bye. I hope I look comfy. I feel comfy. Ooh. We have a little bit of a spiky head going on today. Buenas.
They are failing me on these tumblers.
What? I look rather good for a FaceTime call. I'm like, shoot, I need to have like a date or something right now with this lighting. Can you imagine answering the phone being like, hello, and looking like this? Yeah, what do you have to say about meconium?
It's gross.
It's not that gross. That for a cocktail is a hangover waiting to happen. The very first good, it's not a bad tarry consistency. So I'm here today to talk about what that all means. Oh, what? Yes! There was something else I was gonna say and I can't remember what it was. I really like swimsuits. Ooh, that's like kind of reddish. No, don't like it. Keep going. What's the blue?
Which one?
The blue one. No, the up.
This?
No, to the other way.
This?
Up. No, not striped.
There's not a blue. What are you looking at? These are all green.
Oh. This is how I need to do all my shopping.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not doing all your shopping like this. Dream on, girl.